Okay, so today we are going to read chapter 3 in the Diamond Mystery. Keep going on in our book. Yesterday, we started the book and read chapters 1 and 2, and we discussed who the crime solvers are, what observations you made in the book so far, what's the mystery. Think about how mystery books go. We talked about it yesterday. Kind of the clues that we're seeing so far, and how this book is similar to the absent author, and we talked about maybe some predictions that you guys already have. So I remember Odette saying she thinks maybe the person who's stealing from the jewelry store could be a police officer, because who would suspect the police officer? That's just one example of a prediction that we talked about as a class during our Zoom. And we figured out Jerry and Maya are the crime solvers, that Mr. Karat's store is being robbed and he doesn't know how, because he checks his employees every time they leave the store and they don't have any diamonds on them. So he doesn't know how these diamonds are going missing. And Jerry and Maya are going to work with him to solve this mystery. So, a big thing in mysteries that we haven't talked about a ton yet are called red herrings. And I know that Grant told the class what a red herring was last week, I think. And so a red herring is a false clue that the author puts in the book to kind of throw detectives off their track. So in the absent author, if you think about the clues that Dink and Josh and Ruth Rose were receiving, they got the letter that said that Wallace Wallace would be there, short of being kidnapped. There was no way Wallace Wallace was missing the Book Nook event. So that was an example of a red herring to throw off the detectives, because that Wallace Wallace was already planning a kidnapping. So that was a clue to trick the detectives to really think about what they were trying to solve. So as we read this book, we're going to keep looking for red herrings and see in what ways is the author maybe trying to trick us? What clues might be tricks and what clues are real? Because in the absent author, that ended up being a trick, because Wallace Wallace was Mavis Green and there was no kidnapping at all. It was just a trick. So going through chapter 3, we're going to look out for those red herrings and see if we think the author placed any in this chapter, and if the author's trying to trick the detectives with red herrings, or if these clues are actually real. So, chapter 2 ended, and Maya and Jerry agreed with Mr. Karat to work with him and help him solve the mystery of where his diamonds are going. So it ended. Maya and Jerry exchanged a quick glance and said to Mr. Karat, "We'll start tomorrow." So here's them starting the investigation. This chapter is called The Investigation Begins. Okay. The next day, the sun was shining brightly. Maya and Jerry each packed a bag containing their detective kits and took the bus to Church Street. They got off in front of the hotel, just down the road from Mohammed Karat's famous jewelry store, between the cafe and the post office. Jerry and Maya walked to the old church so they could get a look at the store from across the street. The store was at street level, and Mr. Karat owned the 2 floors above it. "So there's a diamond thief in there somewhere," said Jerry. "Are you scared?" "Oh, come on, let's get started," scoffed Maya, dragging Jerry toward the store. They crossed the street and opened the front door. A bell chimed as they went in. Maya looked around carefully. An elderly assistant asked if she could help them. When Maya asked to speak to the owner, the assistant led the 2 detectives to an office at the back of the store. The assistant knocked on the door to the office. "Come in," they heard Mohammed Karat call. Maya opened the door, and Mohammed Karat stood up from behind his desk. He walked toward them, and his arms outstretched. "I'm so glad to see you," he cried. Then he lowered his voice and whispered, "Another diamond disappeared yesterday. That's the 6th. I can't understand how they do it. I need your help more than ever." Jerry noticed the elderly woman lingering in the doorway. She seemed to be listening curiously. "You may go back to the front, Vivian," said Mohammed Karat, shutting the door behind her. So maybe Vivian seems a little suspicious. "Let's get started," said Jerry as they settled down on the big brown sofa. Could you tell us about the people who work here and what a typical day in the store is like? Mohammed Karat took out his handkerchief and blew his nose loudly. He walked to his desk, opened one of the drawers, and took out a few photos. The store opens at 10 a.m. and closes at 6 p.m. At some point during that time, a diamond disappears. The whole thing is impossible to explain. I'm going mad, he yelled. Mr. Karat, please try to calm down, said Maya. Excuse me, Mr. Karat said as he collected himself. Other than myself, there are 3 people who work here. Here's a picture. Mohammed Karat passed one of the photos to Jerry and Maya. Vivian Leander, store assistant. You've already met her. She's the one who showed you to my office. Vivian works in the front of the store and helps the customers. She's been with the business for many years and has always done an excellent job. But she ran into some trouble last year. Her house burned down, and I believe the insurance company is refusing to pay her any money, explained Mohammed Karat. Apparently, Vivian was behind on home insurance payments, so now she's short on cash. Just last week, she came into my office and asked for a raise. I would be happy to help her, but as I'm sure you can understand, there's no way I can afford a raise right now. Jerry scratched his nose with his pen and made a note in his notebook. Suspect's motive. Vivian Leander needs money. Mohammed Karat passed them another photo. So here's Vivian. And then here's the note that Jerry wrote down. And then this is the photo that Mohammed Karat is showing them now. Danny Braveheart works on the 2nd floor just above the store, he continued. He cleans and polishes the jewelry before it's sold. To be honest, Danny is a bit grumpy for my taste, but he's always on time and keeps things in order. He is a trustworthy employee. Danny's dad actually owned this store years and years ago, Mohammed Karat went on. But he had financial problems and had to sell it. That's when I bought the store. Otherwise, Danny would be the boss here today. Jerry didn't have to scratch his nose this time. He simply wrote, Suspect's motive. Danny Braveheart wants to take over the store. Mohammed Karat passed Jerry and Maya the 3rd and final photo. Luke Smith works on the top floor of the building. He cuts diamonds and sets them into elegant rings and necklaces. Luke hasn't worked here very long, but he's careful and very good at his job. He's worked in the jewelry business for many years, and his previous employers were very pleased with him. Luke likes nice clothes and fast sports cars. He actually bought a new car just last week. Mohammed Karat laughed. You should have seen Danny Braveheart's face when Luke showed off his new car. Danny looked at the car with disgust and then at Luke with loathing. 380 horsepower, Luke had bragged and patted the hood, to which Danny had replied, You only need 1 horsepower if you choose the right one, and stormed off. None of us, Vivian, Luke, or I, understood what he meant, continued Mohammed Karat. Danny was definitely in one of his grumpy moods, but like I said, Luke Smith is a nice guy. He's into fitness, he's always going for a jog and carrying around an apple to snack on. Jerry wrote in his notebook, Luke Smith has plenty of money. Where does it come from? So there's Luke Smith, and here's what Jerry wrote in his notebook about him. All right then, I think that's all you need to know, said Mohammed Karat as he sprang up from the sofa. Now I'll introduce you to the staff. And here's the picture. So we're just going to stop here today at chapter 3 and go over the suspects tomorrow. So right now we were just introduced to 3 new characters, Luke Smith, Vivian, and Danny. So we figured out that Danny and Vivian both struggle for money and have maybe a motive to steal the diamonds to help pay for Vivian's home insurance, and Danny was supposed to own the store, but his dad sold it. So maybe he's trying to get back at Mohammed Karat and take the store back from him. we can make a lot of predictions on what we found out in this chapter so far. So I want you to write in your reader's notebook if you think that any of these clues might be red herrings. Do you think all of these clues are the truth, or could Muhammad maybe be covering something up? Could the author be trying to trick us? What could be a red herring that we found out in this chapter? Because we did find out a lot of clues about all the suspects that Muhammad Karat has so far. So go ahead and write in your notebook a red herring that may be in chapter 3. And then we'll talk about it on Friday. We'll go over what we've written in our readers' notebooks for this week, since our next Zoom will probably be on Friday. Okay, and then we'll do chapter 4 and 5 tomorrow.